ॐ ब्रह्मानन्दं परमसुखदं केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् एकं नित्यं विमलमचलं सर्वधी साक्षिभूतं भावातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं सद्गुरुं तं नमामि। ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्कराचार्य ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ॐ समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ। सर्ववेदान्तसिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। So last week we saw a description of the gross body. We are actually in the topic of viveka, discrimination, the highest definition of which is discrimination, differentiation between self and not self. And a description of the not self is what has now been initiated by the teacher. And so in the not self first falls the gross body, and the gross body was explained in detail what exactly it is. So that we get an idea, we start thinking that if this is what the gross body is, can I be that? That is what it is, to initiate a process of thinking whether I can be all this physical matter that makes up the gross body. And it is not, Gurudev has written to condemn the body, but it's to get a sense of detachment, to detach from the body has been described. We have to remember that the body is the only instrument that we have, body, mind, intellect, but body is the instrument to do any kind of sadhana. It's very important. Body is extremely important, because if I want to read, if I want to talk, if I want to discuss Vedanta, if I want to do some puja, upasana, etc., etc., I need the body. But just because I need something, I do not become it, is what needs to be remembered. So the gross body was described in detail, and now we move on to organs of perception and action. In my book, it is page 130, verse 92. So we have body, mind, and intellect. and then there is the causal body. So we have done the body, and now we are in the mind intellect stuff and the organs of action also. Now here the organs of action that are being told is not the physical action, not the physical organs. So not the physical hands, the physical legs. It's not the physical, but the power behind these organs of actions. That because this is now we are going into the subtle body. The organs of action that can be seen, like our hands, our tongue, our legs, etc., they are the gross body. They have fallen under the gross body, and gross body has been described. So whatever the hand is made up of is the same material, skin and blood and bone and all that has gone into hands and legs, etc., etc. So this is what we are talking about, the subtle aspect. There is we have our hands, which are gross, and then there is a power to grasp. And we come to know that this power is separate from the actual hand when we see somebody who has had a stroke or paralysis. So physically, that person will look absolutely normal. If you look at that person, you will not know that there's something wrong with that person. But if that person starts to lift her or his hand or tries to eat, he can't. And there's nothing wrong with the physical arm. Okay, so please remember that. We will go into verse 92 now. Buddhindriyani shravanam tvagakshi ghranam cha jivva vishayavabodhanat vakpani pada gudamapyuspastaha karmendriyani pravanena karmasu. The ears, skin, eyes, nose, and tongue are organs of knowledge, for they help us gain knowledge of objects, stimuli, vishayas. Objects is stimuli or vishayas. The organ of speech, hands, legs, the anus, and the genital organ are the organs of action, since they have a tendency for work. So there are two things here. There is one is the gross aspect of the eyes. So the eyes, physical eyes that you can see, the ears, the nose, the tongue, that is the physical part of it. But each organ has a power behind it, and therefore you will see a person with perfect eyes, but then that person is blind. So what has happened is the gross part of the body is intact. It's very, very intact. Like I told you, it's same thing happens with the organs of action. The person has got polio, he can't walk. The gross organ can remain intact, but then the power can not be there. So when we say organs of perception and action here now, because we are going into the subtle body, we are actually talking about that power. Please understand that. Okay, so like sometimes some person has brain surgery and then they can't smell anything. So the nose is there physically, the nose is perfectly normal, but they can't smell. So there are these two different things have to be remembered. There is a power of seeing, and then there is the eye itself. Okay, both are required. If the eye gets damaged and the power is there inside, then how still we cannot do. So both are required, but this is what it's talking about. So we know this. The organs of perception, they're called organs of perception because these are the 5 organs through which we perceive the world. So we perceive color and form through the eyes, the smell through the nose, the taste through the tongue, touch through the skin, and then sound through the ear. There are these 5 objects that are there in the world. You might think that, oh, there are so many millions and millions of objects, but all objects will fall under all 5 or few of these categories. So in Vedanta, when we say objects, we say there are only 5 objects. So there's color and form, touch, taste, smell, and touch and taste. So these are the 5 objects. Okay, and then the 5 organs of action. The tongue is speech. Therefore, the tongue doubles. It is an organ of perception as well as an organ of speech. So organ of action and perception both. So sometimes in examples, it'll come when the teacher is talking about the tongue, then you have to understand that he's including both the organs of perception and the organs of action, because the tongue doubles up. And then the hands are meant for grasping, it'll come, legs for walking, and then the genitals and the anus. So we know these are the organs of action and organs of perception. what is happening, what happens with us is we take in stimuli through the organs of perception. It goes into the mind, that stimulus goes into the mind, and then the mind as though orders the organs of action to do action. So this is how, this is the genesis of action. So stimulus comes in. So I'm walking and then I see a beautiful rose plant. And so the mind thinks, oh, what a lovely rose. Maybe I can pluck it and take it for my altar, or maybe I would like to put it in my hair. So then the mind says, okay, walk towards it. And then the hands will pluck the flower and then keep it with us. So this is how this whole thing happens. Perception is received and then to the mind, and then the mind then orders the organs of action to do whatever action, or the mind might decide, no, it looks beautiful on the plant, just let's leave it. So we just walk away. That is how this whole thing is happening. Now the inner instruments. So the inner instrument, antakarana, it's the inner instrument is a literal translation of antakarana. Anta, inner, karana, instrument. And the inner instrument that we have, we saw the outer instrument, which is the gross body, and the inner instrument is the mind, intellect stuff. And that is what is being now explained. Nigadyatenta karanam manodihi ahang kritishchittamiti swavrittibihi manastu sankalpa vikalpanadibihi buddhi padarthadhyavasaya dharmataha atrabhimanat ahamiti ahankritihi swarthanusandhana gunena chittam. The inner organs are called according to their functions as mind, intellect, ego, and chitta. Mind I think there's a typo in my book. Mind for its doubts and hesitations, intellect from its function of determining the truth of thing, the ego in its identification with both these, and chitta from its function of constantly illumining the things of its interest. So the inner instrument that we have, which is subtle, why is it subtle? Because other people cannot see it. I can see my own inner instrument, my mind. I know what thoughts are going through my mind, but others cannot see it. So therefore it is subtle. The mind is made up of 4 aspects. You have to understand the mind to be a homogeneous mass of thoughts. That is what this whole thing is. The inner instrument is a homogeneous mass of thoughts. So the gross body, which can be very easily identified, the hand is totally of a different shape, different function, as opposed to the leg, as opposed to the nose, as opposed to the ear. But in the mind, it is just one, like a huge mass of thoughts. Okay. Now, when these thoughts are in a state of sankalpa, vikalpa. Sankalpa, positive thought. Vikalpa, negative thought. Vikalpa is a thought negating the positive thought. So the mind, when these thoughts, these homogeneous mass of thoughts, they cannot be separated like the hand or this or that. You cannot say that the intellect is here and the mind is here and the chitta is here. You cannot say that. It's all homogeneous. When these mass of these thoughts are in a state of sankalpa vikalpa, should I do, should I not do? To be or not to be is the question, like Hamlet had. So if I have that question, I'm in doubt, it's called a doubt. And then that state of thought is known as the mind. Okay, mind is thoughts in doubt. It's like a swinging pendulum. So how the pendulum goes from one end to the other. So, oh, I should do this. Oh, no, not a good idea. Maybe it is. Maybe I should do it differently. So this is what mind is. When the mind comes to a decision, whether it is a positive decision or a negative, I might decide to do something or I might decide not to do something, then that mass of thought is known as intellect. It is the same mass of thoughts. This thought, when it is doubting, when it is wondering what to do, what not to do, it is called mind. And when it comes to a decision, a firm decision, it is called intellect. And then is the intellect makes its decision based on chitta, which is memory. So the thoughts which start, oh, you know, did I see this, when did I see this person last time, and who is this, and what is the name? And then that, when that memory comes, yeah, this is where I met this person, this is what the name is, etc., etc., that those thoughts are then known as memory. And the one who takes credit for all this is known as ego. So let's go a little bit deeper into this. Between mind and intellect, there are a few differences. One is, mind is of the nature of sankalpa vikalpa. So mind is a doubting Thomas. It is of the nature of doubt, whereas intellect is of the nature of decision. So intellect, when you decide whether positive or negative, it is called as intellect. Mind is thoughts which can go to places known. So if I grew up in India, my mind can go there, but intellect will go to places unknown. And all, like, you know, when the first spaceship went into space or onto the moon, that was the intellect which decided all that. So intellect can go to places unknown, mind can only go to places known. If we were to compare the mind intellect to a river, then the mind is the water, because the water in the river is flowing, right? So mind flows. Mind is a flow of thought, like Gurudev has described. Mind is a flow of thought. It is like that river. But then the intellect acts, the river has a bank, two banks, which guide the water. So mind is that flow, and the intellect is the one that is guiding. So intellect is kind of your conscience. So when the mind is saying, nobody is looking, let me just, you know, lift this thing, the intellect says, no, 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 don't do that. That is wrong. So the intellect is the guiding factor for the mind. And if the intellect is sattvic, then it'll guide in a sattvic way. Rajasic, rajasic, tamasic, tamasic. If the intellect is good, the mind, if the mind is under the control of the intellect, then the mind will flow as per the guidance of the intellect. So the intellect becomes the banks of a river, of the river of thought, and then the river itself is the mind. Okay, the mind is a seat of emotions. So when I say love, kindness, compassion, anger, jealousy, that is at the level of the mind. And intellect is a seat of values. So when I say honest, I'm a very honest person. I'm a very principled. I have my principles. I have my discipline. Then that is coming out of the intellect. Gurudev has also described it as, consider the mind to be a receiving, there is an office, and in every office there'll be a mail room, right? All the mail from all that office goes into that mail room. And then the mail clerk separates it into different, oh, this is meant for this department, this is meant for this department. And that mail clerk, the job is only to separate the mail and give it to the different departments. Then the different departmental heads or whoever is in charge will make a decision on that mail, whatever that mail is, letter is, complaint, maybe whatever it is, that decision. So the mind is like a receiving clerk. The mind receives all the stimulus, all the stimuli from outside, first comes into the mind, and then the mind puts it up to the intellect for a decision to be made. The intellect actually makes the decision and sets. So in the example that I told you, I'm walking along in the garden, and then I see a beautiful rose, and then this stimulus comes into my mind saying, oh, that's a very beautiful rose. And you know, it's come, it's, the rose is there. Now what happens is the mind is putting up to the intellect, oh, there is a beautiful rose there. And now the intellect is making the decision, take it, let's take it, I like it, or no, that's not correct, you shouldn't be plucking a flower from a garden. So that decision is made by the intellect. What is happening actually, these things happen so fast that we do not separate these things. It's just thing I saw and then I decided not to this thing. But actually the rishis, our rishis, they are the scientific, you know, subjective scientists. So the other research scientists that we have, whoever discovered this, that, and the other, they are the objective scientists. So they have looked at the world and then they have come, oh, it's too hot. Let's develop a fan, an AC, a fridge. It's too cold. Let's invent a heater to keep ourselves warm. So that is external world. But our rishis have done research on the internal world, the inner instruments, and this is how they've come up. Like, this is what is happening. Okay, so the intellect can go into the memory banks and say, yeah, last time I plucked this flower and then the curator caught me, so that was not good. Or it might think, oh, I've done this many times before, nobody even bothers, let's take it this time also. So mind putting it up to the intellect going into the memory bank, and then coming back with a response. And then as per that, the organs of action will respond. Either they'll walk away from the flower or they will go towards the flower and take it. Now what is happening is, there is this thing known as ego, the ahankriti. This is what it said here. Atra abhimanat aham iti aham kriti. This very extremely important part of this inner instrument is the ego. Aham kriti, ahamkar, it is, right? The word is ahamkar. So aham karoti iti ahamkar. That is the break of that word. So aham karoti, I do is what is the mass of thought which says I am the one that is doing this, is the ego. And I'll tell you how this ego works. What is actually happening, if you really think about it, the eyes are open, okay, and I am walking in a garden. So of course, when the eyes are open, whatever color and form is there in that garden is going to come through the eyes. That is very natural. I cannot walk with my eyes closed unless I keep my eyes closed and walk. So it's a very natural phenomena that happens, that my eyes are open. So color and form are going in. So now that flower has gone into my mind. That's very natural. There's nothing. It's gone in. Okay. Now the mind is a receiving clerk. That's the job of the mind. So the mind takes that stimulus and puts it onto the intellect, gives it to the intellect, right? And then the intellect says, take it or don't take it, whatever it is. These functions are happening very naturally in the presence of the supreme consciousness. Why do I say there is supreme consciousness? Because if that pure self or supreme consciousness would not have been there in me, could I have even walked? Could I have even had my eyes open? The very fact that I'm saying that I'm walking in a garden indicates that there is the presence of the supreme consciousness within me. It is like electricity is present. That's why this computer is now functioning. Do you get this point? All right. So this three things are happening very naturally in the presence of the supreme consciousness, except there is this imposter, like Gurudev would call it, in between. Imposter says, I saw the flower. Who saw the flower? Actually, who saw the flower? Eyes. Eyes in the presence of the supreme consciousness. It is their function to see color and form. They've seen the color and form. They've seen the color of the rose. They've seen the form of the rose. They have put it up to the mind. Okay, the mind's job is receiving stimulus in the presence of the supreme consciousness, right? So the mind receives it. It's a natural thing to do and gives it to the intellect. Okay, that's fine. Intellect's job is to make a decision. Thoughts in the form of decision is to the intellect. And then a decision has been made. Where is the ego coming in? What has the ego done? Ego has done nothing except take credit. That is the problem. That is the main problem. There's no problem with mind and intellect and memory. The problem is with the ego. So, aham karoti iti aham kritihi iti ahankara. So these are the four inner instruments that we have: mind, intellect, memory, and ego. And in this, the mind and memory, mind is the grossest. and ego is the subtlest. There is the mind, intellect, less gross, or rather more subtle. Subtler than the mind is the intellect. Subtler than the intellect is the memory, and subtlest is the ego. In there is that hierarchy. All are subtle only, okay? All are subtle because nobody else can see my mind. Nobody else can see my intellect. Nobody else can see what thoughts are going through my mind. I know them. So they are subtle, but among them also, the ego is the subtlest. And the ego will, my father used to call it like a snake. It'll come up and it'll bite you, the ego. And that's what the ego does, that it'll immediately take credit for something that somebody else has done. The eyes took in the form, the mind gave it to the intellect made a decision. Story ended there, but it doesn't end. And the ego just says, I decided to take the flower. I am so good. I said, no, don't take. It is stealing. See how good I am. It is the small I that Gurudev would say.
Sorry, I had a question. Why is the ego considered the subtlest? I mean, in terms of its impact, it's very visible and it makes its presence felt quite hugely, but yet it is considered the subtlest.
Because it is closest to the supreme reality. The reason it is subtlest is when we talk about how we function, we are actually functioning, as some of you have heard, we are only functioning because of the reflection of supreme consciousness in the pool of the mind. So that reflection happens actually in the ego only. That's why the ego is and the reason it happens in the ego is because it is the subtlest. Because supreme consciousness being so subtle, that's why consciousness cannot reflect in the gross body, because it is too gross. It needs a subtle medium. So it needs the subtle body. And so in the initial stages, we say that the supreme consciousness is reflecting in the subtle body. But when you even go deeper into Vedanta, then we come to know that the subtle body is actually reflecting in the ego, because of which the ego is getting strength to even say that I'm doing this. That is why ego is considered most subtle. It is. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So these are the four, and Bhagavan Shankaracharya has only given doubts and hesitations. Intellect is determining, etc. Okay. These are the four inner instruments that we have. Now he goes into the pranas, the 5 pranas. So if all of you, I'm sure, has seen Gurudev's chart, the chart of the individual. So there's the Om, and then there's the Vivasanas, and then there is the body, mind, intellect. So body, gross body, and we saw mind, intellect. Now in between the B and the M is the pranas. Okay, so in between. And the pranas, therefore, some people consider it to be subtle body, and some people consider it as a part of the gross body. So we consider it part of the subtle body because that is how Gurudev has put it. But if somebody else comes to us and says, no, that is a part of the gross body, no need to fight. We can say, okay, fine, that's fine. And the reason they say that it is part of the gross, it is in between. The reason they say is because the prana you can feel, right? You can feel the breath go in and out. So that's why they say that it is gross, but we say it is subtle, it is inside. And pranas are the one that are regulating the organs of action. So therefore and in pranas also there are 5 pranas, and that is what he's now going to tell. This verse is to be said in prose because no meter would fit this one. Prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana, bhavati asau pranaha, swayam eva vritti bhedat, vikruti bhedat, suvarna salila adi vata. That is the break and prose form of that verse. one and the same prana becomes prana, apana, vyana, udana, and samana. These are the 5, according to its functions and modifications, like gold, water, etc. So he's given an example. So once again, these prana, first of all, why is it called prana? It's air. What is, if I feel, what am I feeling? Air. Why is the name prana given to the air which is inside? Because outside it is atmospheric air. Okay, it's air. That air I'm breathing in, suddenly why does it become prana? Is because when I breathe in, it comes in contact with the consciousness within, and that's why it is known as prana. That's the number one thing. So we do not say that there is air inside my body. I always say there's pranas inside my body. Okay. Now this prana also is one homogeneous mass, but as per their, just like the mind, it's a homogeneous mass of thoughts. As per their functions, they're divided into 4. Pranas, as per their function, they're divided into 5. So prana is the one that you're taking in. So inhalation is prana, and exhalation is apana. Apana is to give out. So exhalation is apana. Then there is udana, na? Prana, apana, vyana. Vyana is there. Vyana controls circulation. The pranas, please know that they control the physiological functions in our body. Okay, so prana taking in, apana giving out. So we have inhalation, exhalation. Then we have circulation. The blood is being circulated throughout our body constantly. So that circulation is controlled by vyana. And samana is found in the middle portion of the body, stomach. So digestion. So digestion is covered by samana. That's why when people have digestive problems, then an Ayurvedic doctor will say samana vayu is out of balance. When people have swelling, circulation problem, then there's something wrong with the vyana vayu. If there is constipation, then apana vayu, something wrong with the apana prana, because that is ejection. So urination, toilet, everything is controlled by apana, not just the breath out, all the physiological. Udana is one which is opposed to gravity. So when I vomit, tears, that is udana, that is governed by udana vayu. And it is said that at the time of death, udana vayu gets activated. So sometimes you will see people, they say, oh, he just had, because I know my father-in-law, my mother-in-law said, he was just lying and he just had hiccups and then he passed. That means udana vayu is getting activated. So when a person vomits, when a person has hiccups, udana is getting activated. And it is said that the jivatma, udana acts as the rocket. So jivatma actually on the udana vayus, resting on the udana vayu leaves the body. And once that leaves, the body is dead. The gross body is dead. So at the time of death, udana is the one which gets activated. So these are the 5 pranas. There are 49 sub pranas, but we need not to go into that right now. So these are the 5, and therefore swayam eva vritti bhedat means their functions are different. Vikruti bhedat, so they're controlling different, so they are called, but actually they are also one homogeneous mass only. So there is these pranas that are flowing through our body, and then so obviously it is said that pranas are found in the facial part, in the face part, because and samana is found in the stomach because it's controlling digestion. Vyana is all across the body because blood is circulating all across. Apana is found in the lower part of the body. It is said like that it is found. That doesn't mean that it's labeled there. It's all but because the function is excretion, so apana is found in the lower part of the body. Prana is found in the upper part of the body. Samana is found in the middle part of the body. Vyana is found in all the body because it's controlling circulation. And udana is wherever. So if there's hiccups, then diaphragm area. If it is tears area, even tears they say is controlled by udana. Okay, so these are the 5. Okay, now he has given an example. Suvarna, Salila, Adivata. So Salila is water and Suvarna is gold. The idea is that gold is one, but it gets converted into various ornaments, and then we call it necklace and chain and bangle and bracelet, but actually it is gold. So actually all these pranas are one only. That is the example that is giving, but then it is called as prana: inhalation, exhalation, circulation, digestion, but they're all same. That is why he's giving. And water, different water becomes waves. So that's why he says, just like the water and the gold are given different names. There's only gold only is there, but all the ornaments are made of gold. There is only gold. So there is only one prana actually, but it is called by 5 different names because it is doing 5 different functions. Okay, and it is considered subtle body by Gurudev, so we consider it as subtle body. It's part of the subtle body. All right. Okay. Now, the effects of the subtle body, 96 to 101. Vagadi pancha, Shravanadi pancha, Pranadi pancha, Brahmukhani pancha, Buddhyadya vidya, Pichakama karmani, Puryashtakam sukshma sharira mahuhu. The 5 organs of action, such as speech, etc., the 5 organs of perception, such as ears, etc., the 5 pranas, the 5 elements, starting with space, along with the 5, along with the discriminative intellect, etc., and also ignorance, desire, and action. These 8 cities together constitute the subtle body. Actually, when we describe the subtle body, we actually only describe the 5 pranas, the 5 organs of action. Organs of action means not the gross organs, like I told you, the power behind. So that is subtle. The organs of perception and the mind, intellect, intellect, mind, chitta and ahankara, 4. So there is 5 pranas, 5 organs of action, 5 organs of perception, 4 inner instrument. So that becomes 19. 5, 10, 15, and 4, 19. Okay, here Bhagavan Shankaracharya has also included ignorance, desire, and action, which is these 3 things are known as the knot of the heart. There is ignorance of my real self, because of which a desire is arising in my mind, and because of that desire I am acting. So he has added this into the subtle, because the ignorance is very subtle. Ignorance of myself is subtle. The ignorance that I don't know chemistry or physics, that we are not talking about any objective thing. We are talking about the ignorance of who I really am. Right now, I consider myself to be the ego. That's why I say I'm doing, I'm speaking, I'm whatever, walking, running, etc., etc. So ignorance, that desire also is subtle because it's in my mind. It's only action. When an action is generated, then that becomes gross. But he has included it here. So he includes 5 organs of action. So there is 5, 10, 15, 20, because he has also included the elements. And the reason he includes the elements is because that is the material that has gone into the formation of the mind, intellect, and buddhi. So the material also he has included. Generally, we don't, but he has done it. So you can take it, doesn't matter. And also the action, these 8 cities, he calls them 8 cities. So he has not divided 5, 10, 15. He has just taken the clump together. So the 5 pranas is one, the 5 organs of action is one, the 5 organs of perception is another one, then the mind, intellect stuff is another, that's 4. And then he goes into the discriminative intellect, he's done it separate, 5. 6 is ignorance, 7 is desire, and 8 is action. So he has divided it that way. All right. But subtle body, if you were to study, the pranas we call as subtle body. So therefore the 5 pranas are included, the 5 organs of action, 5 organs of perception, and then the 4 mind, intellect, memory, and ego. So 19. Some authors, some masters will say 17. And the 17 means they divide the mind into mind and intellect only. And when they divide the mind and intellect, what they are doing is they include the memory in the mind and the ego with the intellect. So where we say 4, they say only 2. Both are correct. So then they say 17. There are 17 aspects of the subtle body, they say, because for them, mind is only made of 2 things. There is the mind and there is the intellect. And then what about the ego? Ego, they clump it with intellect, and memory, they clump it with the mind. So both are correct. 17 or 19. Gurudev has always said 19. So we always take it as 19. Is that okay? Any questions? All right. Now, idam shariram shrunu sukshma sadnitam lingam tvapanchikrita bhuta sambhavam savasanam karma phalanubhavakam swadhyanato nadirupadhiratmanah. This subtle body, listen carefully, also called the Linga Sharira, produced from the subtle elements, is possessed of the inclinations, vasanas, and it causes the individual to experience the fruits of his past actions. It is the beginningless conditioning on the self brought about by its own ignorance. Okay? So the subtle body, first thing is that the subtle body is also known as the Linga Sharira. Linga means indicator. So the basic thing is, I remember once our neighbor came running to my house in Bombay, called my mom, and I was only there in the house. She called my mom. She said, come, you know, my father-in-law, I don't know what has happened to him. He's just lying there, right? So both of us very bravely, we went there, and my mom was very brave. She said, do you have a little mirror? So she said, yes. So and my mom held the mirror on his nose, and there was no vapor on the mirror. So she said, you better call your husband. I don't think. So the reason that it is called as the Linga Sharira indicator is the pranas indicate whether there is life in the body or not. That is why it is, that is the reason for it being called Linga Sharira. Generally, it is the pranas. That is the first thing that we will check. If we don't know what has happened to this person, we check we put our hand near the nose and see whether the person is breathing or not. Okay, so that is linga, and it is produced from the subtle elements. I told you that the 5 elements, we saw how they grossify from the subtle elements, they become gross, and then the gross body comes. But the subtle elements remaining in subtle form, they form the subtle body. This is what is being said here. So subtle elements, and it's possessed of inclinations. That is, in our chart, the V vasanas. Vasana means fragrance. The literal translation of vasana is fragrance. And the reason it is called as fragrance is it is holding the blueprint of all the actions that we have done in the past. And the way it is holding the blueprint of our actions is in subtle form, very, very subtle form. So that is why it is even more subtle than the mind, because a person can know what is in the mind, but can never know what is in the vasanas. Because the vasana becomes known only when it arises as a thought in the mind. That time the person will know that, oh, I had the vasana of this. That's why that thought comes. See, unless there is a vasana, there is no way that any thought can come to our mind. There is no way. The source of thought is the vasanas. And the source of vasanas is the previous births. And what from the previous births have I brought in my vasanas is all the actions that I have done. So all the karmas that I do in the past lives, they come in subtle form as vasanas. And then as per those actions, my vasanas are. So if the actions are sattvic, the vasanas are sattvic. If it is rajasic, vasanas will be rajasic. If it's tamasic, vasanas will be tamasic. And then as per these vasanas, those type of thoughts come to my mind. If I have sattvic vasanas, in the example that I told you, if my vasanas are sattvic, then when I look at the rose, and even though I feel like plucking it and taking it for myself, my sattvic vasana will initiate a thought saying that, no, that is not the right thing to do. And that's why you don't do it. A Rajasic thought will be, you're not going to get caught, take it. Sattva will say, it doesn't matter if you're caught or not, you are doing wrong, don't do it. There's a difference. You know, some people will do it, if they're not going to get caught, who cares? I'll do it. But then there are people who are, no, whether I get caught or not, it's wrong to do. So that's why I will not do it. Okay. So as per that vasana, that type of thought will come. And this is what he's saying. It causes the individual to experience the fruits of his past actions, because those results that have to be experienced are stored in the vasana level. And when that trigger comes, actually the situation comes to us because we have to experience that sort of whatever that situation. You know, maybe I have to experience slipping and falling in the snow, and that's why the snow will fall, and then I will have a thought, oh, so nice, let me go for a walk. People, you know, people think that I thought and I did this. It is actually the other way around. It happens because I am supposed to have that sort of an experience. So I am supposed to go through the experience of falling in the snow, and that's why the snow falls, and that's why I have the thought I should go there. Because then what do I say? What will I say? Man, you know, I shouldn't have had this thought only. I wouldn't have fallen. I would have been at home and I wouldn't have fallen. What the person doesn't realize is, you know, if that person has to go through an experience of falling, he'll fall in the house only. People have fallen in their own homes. It's not like everybody who has fallen and broken a bone has happened in the snow. People fall inside their home, their own homes, for no reason, right? So the experience has to be of a fall and a broken bone or not a broken bone or whatever. And because of that, that situation arises around us and we go through that experience. And that is the reason we do not blame anybody else. There are instances where we get whiplash because why somebody else hit us. So it's actually no fault of ours. The person lost control and they hit us. And we blame that person. We say, you know, he shouldn't have done it. It's because of him that I got whiplash. What it is I have to go through that experience of whiplash because I have brought that vasana from the past, and that's why that person becomes an instrument in hitting me. Because how will I get whiplash unless somebody hits me from the back? So therefore that person becomes an instrument. This is how things work. We think about it in the other way, but this is how exactly. That's why he's saying the individual, it causes the individual to experience the fruit of his past action. So there is an action in the past, the result of which is that I should get a whiplash. Okay, now how will that whiplash come unless somebody else becomes an instrument to hit me from the back? So that's why when on the outside, there is no mistake of mine. And of course, when I go to insurance, I'm going to say it's his fault. It's his.
Due to past actions or past births. Does it gives, I know it gives little bit toleration, it gives patience, it reduces your anger, sorrow. But at the same time, does it mean that you have to suffer all the time and let the people treat you whatever way they want, you know? Sometimes what I feel is that this, our religion or our thinking or philosophy makes us feel lowest, and also like your own self-confidence or your nothingness comes there. We are not all saints, right? When you are at saints level, I can understand because you have such power on yourself that you can control with that power others. But being as we are, does it mean that you have to suffer all the time, whatever people do to you, trash you here, there? You know,
Yeah.
that is some question.
So see, there is one thing known as destiny, and there is another thing known as self-effort.
Okay.
Okay. So whatever situation is coming to us is destiny. Okay, that situation has come because of our past. Now, what I do with that situation, I do have a choice in that. I do have a choice in that. Okay. And that's the main reason that we see people coming out of addictions, people getting out of abusive relationships, because then they say enough is enough. I'm not going to suffer anymore. So self-effort is there depending on the situation. And of course, the highest is if you disidentify with everything. But then, like you said, that is for the saints, right? So one way of not suffering is to disidentify with that, with the situation. Considering yourself to be that supreme self, and I have got nothing, like this is happening to my body, and I have got nothing. But even to reach that stage, a lot of study is required. So that's why there are a lot of people who have come to Swamiji and they say, Swamiji, you say I'm not the body, but you know, I'm in so much pain. How can I this thing? And Swamiji says that, but you have not practiced this knowledge since very young age. Those who have, we see that I've seen people who have been in the mission, been with Gurudev, they are much in a different sort of mental state than others who haven't.
Isn't that self-effort also due to past action? Past
Up to a certain extent, but then self-effort is always there. I don't know if you remember the story that, which is one of my favorite, is of the cow being tied to the post. So there is a cow who is tied to the post, and the rope that she has, maybe 5 feet, 10 feet, 50 feet, is her destiny. She has brought that. She's tied with a 5-foot rope, or somebody else might be tied with a 50-foot rope. But the cow has a choice. So the one who has a 50-foot rope, though she can go around the pole in a radius of 50 feet, she chooses to just stay near the post and do nothing. That choice is hers. Within the 50 feet, she does have a choice, but she chooses not to. Whereas the one who has a 5-foot rope, maybe only 5 feet of movement she can do, but she keeps tugging at that rope to get out of that 5-foot diameter. Choice.
Yeah.
Choice is there. Never ever think that there is no choice. Purushartha is there. That's why Shruti has used the word Purushartha. What is Purushartha? If that word has no meaning and if there's no self-effort, then why that word even will be there?
Sometimes even controlling yourself is a self-effort.
Yeah. That just takes control, is much harder than letting loose. That's why talking is easier. Silence is difficult.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Om swasti prajabhyah paripalayantam nyayena margena mahim mahishaha go brahmanebhyah shubhamastu nityam loka samasta sukhino bhavantu kale varshatu parjanyah prithvi sasya shalini desho yam kshobarayitah brahmana santu nirbhayaha om sarvesham swastir bhavatu sarvesham shantir bhavatu sarvesham purnam bhavatu sarvesham mangalam bhavatu सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. I just want to say one quick thing before we go, because just when I was saying my prayers, it came to me. See, my computer just going kaput, like not kaput, but disconnecting, was destiny. That is destiny. Now I had a choice. I could have immediately phoned Dinesh and told him, you know what, my computer gone, forget it. We are at the end of the class. You can just say your closing prayers, I'm gone, right? But I said, no, let me try to reconnect. And I was trying to reconnect and it wasn't happening. So I actually shut my computer off completely. And Dinesh was on the phone with me, right? So that is the self-effort. Choice is always there. Remember, you always have a choice. Okay? All right. Thank you very much.